Hello, everybody. My name is Jon Breithaupt. I chose to do the Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act of 1960 as my policy for this assignment. So, Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act was passed on June 12th, 1960, when it was signed into law by then President Dwight Eisenhower. It was passed by the federal government, specifically the 86th U.S. Congress. It was introduced to the House by Congressman George M. Grant, who was a Democrat from the state of Alabama. He was actually the first and only congressman to serve in his district, which is somewhat of an interesting fact. By the mid-20th century, it was widely understood that the current demands being placed on our national forests, as well as other federal, state, and public lands, could not be sustained in the future. The scope of this policy really established a mandate to manage our nation's federal forests for a variety of various uses, which I'll get into in a moment. Generally, the issue was not that contentious when it was initially passed. You had nonprofits like the Wilderness Society, as well as the Sierra Club, really focused on trying to pass comprehensive federal legislation to permanently protect large tracts of wilderness areas. And so this policy was passed in 1960. Those organizations were then successful with the passing of the Wilderness Act in 64. And because of the efforts concentrated on that legislation, there really wasn't a ton of contentious issues surrounding the passing of the Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act. The debates were relatively minor. Moving forward decades later, I think some special interest groups would take up some debates regarding the mandate to manage for a variety of different uses. So again, like many other legislative acts that pass in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, an increased use of public lands with regards to recreation areas and timber production post-World War II, when the economy was really booming and the pressure on natural resources was very intensive, is sort of when this policy moved through Congress successfully. At this point in time, grazing on national forests had really dissipated for the past 3 to 5 decades, kind of after the 1920s. Really, the policy provisions kind of summarized in 4 different areas is kind of the best way to outline what it's all about. So it requires the Forest Service to manage national forests for a variety of different uses, including outdoor recreation, range, timber, water, and wildlife and fish purposes. Another provision of the policy is that the Secretary of Agriculture can direct renewable resource management on national forests. I chose to pick the following quote that I think summarized the policy in kind of an eloquent way and also an effective way, and that is that national forests will be managed so that some land will be used for less than all of the resources, and harmonious and coordinated management of the various resources, each with the other, without impairment of the productivity of the land. So again, similar to some of the language found in the enabling legislation of the National Park Service, without the impairment of the productivity of the land. So it's a little different than what MPS's founding legislation is all about. So again, another important component is that the Act also calls for a sustained yield of several forest products and services. A sustained yield. So that's kind of that other half of the equation. The national forests now have to be managed for a multiple use direction, but also the resources that are being utilized must be sustained at various rates. So under the direction of the Secretary of Agriculture, the United States Forest Service, which is a part of the USDA, carries out this policy. Thank you.